Hey everyone, another whiskey review. This is Mike, I'm Narby.
What's up?
We're doing Highland Park Dark Origins.
This is a special release, limited edition from Highland Park. From what I understand, it's very similar to the Highland Park 12. They're entry level, but there's double the amount of first fill sherry casks. So instead of having about 20% first fill sherry casks, there's about 40%. So hopefully there's a little darker color. Doesn't look like that much darker, and more of those heavy sherry flavors like the chocolate, the orange, the nuts, the dates, the figs, toffee, all that good stuff.
So like Mike said, there's no age statement on this, but he said it's supposedly very similar to the 12-year-old, and the main thing he meant by that is we assume that the majority of the whiskey in here, if not all of it, is 12 years old.
Right.
So
or younger.
Or younger. No age statement. We never know.
So I see a little, maybe a little darker than Highland Park 12,
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
Not much. You know, from the first fill sherry casks, the double.
Yeah.
But definitely lighter than I expected. I expected a lot darker.
It's a little tricky, right? It's the whole advertising, the special release. They don't show you the color of the whiskey. They put it in a black bottle. They call it Dark Origins. You automatically assume it's going to be this super, super dark sherry whiskey. Not that that makes it any better. The color doesn't matter, but they obviously advertise it that way. And you know, I thought it was going to look like coffee when I poured it, but obviously it doesn't. It looks very similar to the 12-year-old. We just reviewed the 12-year-old. This is going to be the follow-up review, so we can kind of compare. So, one thing I detect immediately, and as I've talked about before, something that bothers me in whiskey is sulfur. So immediately, you know, when that exists in a whiskey, and when it's a dominant thing in a whiskey, I immediately notice it, and it's pretty off-putting for me. So that's the first thing I get is sulfur, and then I kind of put my glass down, and I usually bring it back up to detect the other flavors that are more in the background, I should say.
I get a little combination actually of like fresh matchsticks,
Yeah.
and then the burnt, you know, lit, burnt, put out, rotten matchsticks. The sulfur that Narby's talking about, the
Sure.
bad stuff. Kind of a weird combination.
It is citrusy. I am getting lemon. I am getting orange.
Little pineapple.
Yeah, but compared to the standard range where I was getting more vanilla cream, lemon sorbet, more of that, this is a little more along the lines of burnt caramel, very strong orange peel, and then combined with that matchstick stuff that we keep talking about, the sulfur.
You definitely get the first fill sherry influence. And this guy too, is bottled at a higher 46.8% alcohol level versus the Highland Park 12 is 43%. Your standard, I definitely noticed that.
Absolutely. On the palate. So, as soon as this went on my palate, it was very, very drying on the tongue. So I swirled it around for 4 or 5 seconds. And normally I like to keep swirling it for a little bit longer than that. But as it started drying out my tongue, I just decided to swallow it. So not super, super fresh tasting in my mouth. I am detecting some bitterness, some tannins, dry wood. Some of that sulfur for sure still exists in my palate. Some caramel, some of that orange. Not that much, again, of the citrus flavors that I was getting from the standard range 12-year-old. But overall, not a bad whiskey by any means. But if at least from my perspective, and Mike will give you his opinion, I think I prefer the standard range 12-year-old. What about you?
I agree. I think it's, you know, the standard range, the Highland Park 12 obviously has its flaws, a few flaws if you want to be really harsh, really critical. but this has a lot more flaws, and this is a little confusing. I still get that little bit off-putting sulfur, and I get some drying wood influence, which for me is a little unpleasant. And I get really big, spicy, hot, like cinnamon, like Big Red Gum or Fireball whiskey, really spicy cinnamon, and it just takes away from some of those other pleasant sherry flavors, like the orange peel, the fig, the dates, the nuts, all the stuff that I mentioned before.
I really like that. The Big Red Gum. There's all those the spicy cinnamon candies. Those little red. I don't even know what they're called, but like red dots or whatever they're called. Totally getting that. I wouldn't have thought of that. And I like that.
Big time. And that part's good, but I guess I just expected a little more complexity from the special release.
One thing, going back to it now, the second nosing after tasting it and going back, I am definitely getting some meats. So I'm thinking of like an Italian deli sandwich with a bunch of stacked meats. So I am definitely getting that. It's not necessarily in the most pleasant way, but it is existent in there. Mike talked about complexity. It's almost like it's almost complex in a confusing way. It's like stuff in there that I don't want. So it's like some stuff going on, but overall I don't enjoy it that much. I'm gonna give this whiskey. I'm gonna give it an 80. I was gonna go almost a little lower, but I'm gonna push it up to an 80 out of 100. I would say 80 is the mark where I decide whether I would buy the whiskey or not. If it's 80 or higher, then it's kind of a recommended buy, I guess. So think of it that way with the scoring. So even though I am giving it an 80, I don't think I would rush out to go and buy this. I would just say buy the standard range 12-year-old for less money. Makes a lot more sense for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what Narby was saying, it's very confusing. I guess you could say challenging, but the flavors, the aromas, they don't mesh well together. They don't really fit well together. And then on that note, I would say I'd probably give it a 79. I'll go a point lower. And definitely, don't rush out to buy it. Hopefully, if your friend has it, maybe try it, but don't rush out to buy it yourself.
That's the Dark Origins.
Thank you.